Welcome back to the Forge for another Rusty production. Today we're going to be playing with some rebar. So I've been playing around making a whole bunch of tools lately, and with tools you need tool steel, which is high carbon steel that can actually take a bit of a beating. But rather than actually just go and purchase the steel, which I could clearly do, I've been enjoying the scrapper experience. So just finding stuff at scrap material businesses, and I've got a heap of rebar, and I've got, you know, this type of rebar, I've got that type of rebar. There's all different types, and every bit of research that I've done online says that it's one of those things with rebar in particular is you do not know what you're gonna get. It's scrap steel that's all been smelted together, and so you know, this part of the bar might actually have some carbon in it, this part won't. But ideally, this is not the sort of stuff that you want to be making tools out of, not the sort of stuff you want to be making knives out of. Well, I'd like to test that theory today. So what I'm thinking of doing is actually heating up a couple of different pieces of this material and seeing if I can get it to harden. And then if I can get it to harden and actually go through a hardening test with a file, then I'll start using some of it for some tool projects in the future. So today's about testing the steel. I'm going to test hardening with quenching in water. I'm going to test it with quenching in oil, and we'll just see what results we get. So join me as we heat up this metal and get started. Okay, well, here's the 4 pieces of steel that I'm looking to use. We'll call that A, B, C, and D. I think C's actually got a bit of concrete on it, so I'm not sure how that's going to work out, but we'll try and clean these off as we go. I'm just going to heat up the end of each of them, and the other thing to note is that some of the research I've been doing online says that even if this is hardened steel in some part of it, like 2 inches down, it could be mild steel. So or at least if there's more carbon in here, 2 inches down from there, or even 1 inch, doesn't really matter. This is potentially rubbish steel the whole way along, even if I hit pockets of high quality carbon steel. So it's just a bit of a mug's game as far as like whether I'm going to get anything good out of it. But what I'm trying to see is, can I harden any of this? And if I can, then I'm going to just start using this for practice. Maybe I can make some shop knives and things like that, and just take it through the process. So A, B, C, and D. Okay, so that's A and B. And just so you know, A seems to be very conductive, because I only put that in for half a second just to move some stuff around, and it burnt my hand. So a little bit more care is needed. Okay, we're going to try for the water quench, non-magnetic. That's A and B, again non-magnetic. Now, metallurgy is a science, and this, what I'm doing right here, is not scientific. But we're trying a few things just to see, with the steel that we've got on hand, whether we're going to be able to use it for some other purposes. So, as soon as this cools down, I will run a file over it. For those who haven't seen, I have tried this with the spark test before, and I'll just put a link in to the spark test that I did. You'll be able to see that from the steels that I had, I could not see any discernible difference to be able to use those sparks to let me know if there was any high carbon in there. Right, there's the 2, A and B. We'll see how we go. So while D and C are heating up, I've got my A and B samples here. They're still a little bit hot, so I'm just going to make sure I don't burn myself again. But I have my nice bastard file here. Here's my steel. We'll run it over here. It's definitely biting into that metal, so not as badly as it was before. So it's hardened slightly, but certainly nothing overly useful. So this steel, which I've got lots of, it's a smaller stock. I'm going to suggest I'm just going to treat as mild steel, and I'll just use that for any sort of mild steel jobs. Now this piece here, B. That's a little better. It's still biting, but only just. Sort of skating over, but then if it gets right on an edge, it bites. So that's not too bad. I don't know if you can see that there. It's only biting when it hits one of these edges. If I go just over the flat part, that's not too bad. So I'm going to try and use that maybe for a shop knife later. I'll heat the other two up and we'll see what's happening with them. Oh, and also what I'll do is just with A, I'm going to try heating that up again and try an oil quench, see if that makes any difference whatsoever. I don't know that it is going to, but I'll try it and we'll see how we do. Which one is it? That's C, that's D, and that's a nice chunk of charcoal right in the middle to keep it going. Okay. Non-magnetic, that's C. Non-magnetic, that is D. If anyone's wondering, that water is still cool. It's obviously hot around where the metal is, but it's dispersing really, really fast. So we're back with sample C. Got our bastard file, and it's skating over that one too. Again, it's similar to B, although this one's biting a little bit more. So I might try heating this one up in the oil too. So that's C, and D. That's about the same. So I'm going to say C and D teams seem to have hardened a little bit, but not nearly as much as B. A certainly hasn't hardened much at all. So I'll try A, C and D in the oil. So I've got just a little quenching pot for the oil and we'll see if that makes any difference whatsoever. So I've got this little can of oil, that's just vegetable oil in there. There's our magnet nearby, and you can see the area around here, other than this little block of wood, are not flammable. So water here if we need it, although oil and water don't necessarily mix. But I'm going to take one at a time with the metal this time, and just got to be a little bit more careful, especially being such a small pot of water to put the oil in. Some of this metal's a little larger, and it's probably going to flash. So just got to be a little bit careful when I do it. But let's get the metal and see how it goes. Magnetic. Now the other problem with obviously using a little can like this is the oil's going to heat up really, really fast. In fact, the outside of that can is already so hot just after the one piece of metal that I actually, even with the glove, I had to put that down. So that changes the game a fair bit. So it's hot oil now that I'm actually putting in sample C and D to. So I actually don't know how that's going to affect things. Leave a comment as to the difference between quenching in hot oil versus cold oil, because the first one was definitely at least room temperature, if not cooler than that. So let me know the difference, but I'll just grab this other piece of metal and we'll do the test on sample A to see if the oil made any difference. Okay. That's actually skating. Well, it's cutting a little bit, but I would suggest that is actually now at a point where the other groups were. So maybe the sample B. So it's cutting a little bit when it gets right in on the groove, but it's actually skating on the rest. So is it? No, maybe I would suggest that was cutting definitely when I put it through the water, but now it seems to be more a case of like sample D and C. Where it's got a little bit hardened, and hardened to a point of maybe being useful, but certainly no long-term tool. So, anyway, that was interesting. Let me know in the comments is whether you think that was just a weird fluke or whether that's actually science. Because I'd be interested to see whether I've achieved something in the difference between those oils. And as I said, quenching in oil versus water or even in air is all a thing relating to the type of steel you're using. And the idea with these rebar pieces is that it's just junk steel the entire way through, so I don't know what I'm supposed to be getting at different points along this single rebar. So it's all just a bit of play, and I'm only working with the metals that I've got here, but I thought you'd be interested in the experiment. And let's try these next two steels and see if that makes a difference. Alright, sample C. Not magnetic. That's cutting right in. Oh, it's getting a little bit. That doesn't seem to be much better, whether it's the water or the oil. So I'll just cool it down there a little bit. Yeah, that's pretty much cutting right into it. Yeah. So not a big difference there. It looks to have hardened slightly, but nothing too amazing. That is sample C. Still magnetic. We'll go back again and get it a bit hotter. Yeah, non-magnetic. Interesting that one didn't flash. If anyone knows the reason why one flashed and not the other, let me know. I've got a feeling it just has to do with the different temperature. Okay, so our final sample, sample D. It cuts a little bit, but that's actually a lot better than the other two. So I'm going to say, let's see if it's still hot. A actually did harden. D hardened significantly, and I reckon I could probably make something useful out of that. The other two though, they certainly didn't harden hard enough for me to actually make any sort of tools out of them, or anything that needs to hold any sort of edge. So what does that mean? Well, not a lot. It's just an interesting experiment. It means that for the time being, that this bar and the pieces that I cut off this, and this bar this bar and the pieces I cut off this one are things I'm going to use to do some practice work, but ideally practicing with knives, blades and things that can hold an edge, versus using the other rebar for practicing on decorative items like hooks and you know, things that I can hang. So bottle openers and stuff like that. So thanks very much for watching. It's a short video, just a little bit of an experiment. If you like these sort of experiments, if you like this stuff and the tools that I'm making, this is just the journey of an absolute novice, a beginner blacksmith that's just learning to play with some of these things. If you like that, give me a like, put some comments below. I'd be interested to see what you thought about the process. And subscribe. So subscribe and hit the notifications bell so that you can be told when new videos are coming up. And again, as I've said before, we are looking to get one out every single week. Until next time, thanks so much for watching.